Paulton's Park is one of England's most popular family parks, located just outside of Southampton. They claim to be home to 70 rides and attractions, including 7 roller coasters. The name Paulton in Paulton's Park comes from the Paulton's estate where the park is situated. They opened their doors in 1983 and just started off with a bird garden, a playground, and a museum. A couple years later, they added a train, a kids land, couple dinosaurs, trampolines. Then in 1993, they added their first roller coaster. Now the park is 140 acres of land, one of the top rated theme parks in the UK, and really I can see why. It often gets overlooked by coaster enthusiasts because it's not a thrill park the size of Alton Towers or Thorpe Park, but don't let the size of the roller coasters deceive you. This park was absolutely fantastic. So this is going to be my full in-depth review of the property. I'm going to talk about the different attractions in the park, the various themed lands, give some recommendations for your visit, and also talk about what Paulton's Park could benefit from in the future. So firstly, we visited Paulton's Park from London. It was about a 2-hour train ride to Southampton, and then we caught an Uber to Paulton's Park. It's about a 15-minute drive from the main train station. To my understanding, there is a bus you could take, but it'll be a significantly longer trip, and it was not the most convenient. The Uber just dropped us off right at the front entrance. It was perfect. Driving up to this park literally reminded me of being in a neighborhood. Like, I didn't expect to turn a corner and see a bunch of roller coasters, but everything's nestled in the trees. This place is tucked back there. It's really cute. There's not a whole lot you can see as you're walking up. It's just the park logo, this wide open plaza, and as you journey further and further into the park, that's when the attractions start popping up. Each area, for the most part, is very well done. I think the key land that really put Paulton's Park on the map was Peppa Pig World. It opened in 2011 and caused the park's attendance to literally double. They went from 500,000 visitors to 1 million in a year, and ever since then, they've had the budget to just continually add new attractions, update old areas. This was my first time experiencing the park, so I never got to see it prior to Peppa Pig, but I think it's really cool to see how much they've improved, and I'm excited for their future. The most recent land that they debuted, Tornado Springs, opened in 2021. It currently includes 2 roller coasters and easily has the best theming in the park. It reminded me of like a knockoff of Radiator Springs, a Disney's California Adventure. And I don't mean that as a dig. Like, clearly you can see where the inspiration came from. It's a very old school, classic, like, desert town. It's an immersive little area. I was really impressed. The big roller coaster that opened with it is Storm Chaser. That's their largest attraction. For those of you familiar with Knott's Berry Farm, this is a clone of Sierra Sidewinder. It's a perfect addition for this park because it really is family thrill. We rode it one time and found it to be pretty tame, and then we rode it another time with no one sitting behind us, and we spun like crazy. It was almost too much even for us. So it really shows how that experience can vary. We had a blast on that ride. It was easily our favorite in the park. Right next door is Farmyard Flyer. That's their newest coaster. It opened just in 2022, just a small little family ride. Some really cute theming around it. Interestingly enough, I would say actually their most thrilling ride is not a roller coaster. It's this frisbee called Cyclinator. It seems like it was Paulton's Park attempt at adding a thrill ride without pushing it too far. Like, they didn't go to the full-size Zamperla Discovery, the ones that go like 70 miles per hour, because that'd be too much, but they just want to like test the waters here. And from what I've gathered, this ride is extremely well received. So maybe that's gonna be a step in the right direction for adding more thrill coasters. Like, obviously they have to continue to maintain that family-friendly status, so whatever they add, I imagine they'd want to keep the height requirement around that 48-inch mark, but there's still plenty of attractions they could go with that blend that line between family and thrill. I'm gonna go through the rest of the park, but at the end I'm gonna tell you about some of the roller coasters I'd love to see here. Now, what's interesting about the way that Paulton's Park is set up is that the natural greenery and landscape is way more prevalent than the rides. Immediately when you go through the front entrance, what's the first thing you see? A big store for Peppa Pig, of course. But after that, gardens. So many trees, shrubs, flowers. It is beautiful. It honestly reminded me of Alton Towers, but on like a smaller scale, which I didn't expect at all. Frankly, I didn't really do any research before going to Paulton's Park. I knew about some of the attractions that they had, but I didn't know what the park was like, and I was quite impressed. It's clear that the owners really care about this place. Even as we were walking around, there were people taking care of the landscaping, sprucing it up. I mean, we went on a relatively light day. There's wait time boards around the park, which are really appreciated. You could just see all of the rides, 0 minutes, 0 minutes. So it seems like many of the staff members took that time to like do some basic housekeeping, and it just felt very homemade. Like, those could be your neighbors out doing yard work. And everyone's so friendly. Everyone's waving, smiling. They were all happy to be there, which I love to see. So from your front entrance, if you go off to the right-hand side, that's where Tornado Springs is. Behind that is Peppa Pig World. Obviously, that's the land that draws a lot of families there. Interestingly enough, there's not a roller coaster in that section, which I was actually kind of surprised about. You know, previously I'd been to Peppa Pig Land, the dedicated theme park in Orlando, and they have Daddy Pig's roller coaster. You won't find that here, but I will say this one land over overall I thought was nicer than the entirety of Peppa Pig Land. Everything was super elaborate, and it felt more lively and creative. There was a relaxing boat ride, some transportation attractions, slides. The longest line we saw all day was to meet Peppa Pig, like she was a freaking celebrity. It was awesome. I mean, hey, if it kept the line short for everything else, I was fine with it. Adjacent to Peppa Pig World is Critter Creek, which is themed essentially around like hybrid animals. Like they just get really weird and clever with some of these names. I mean, the signature roller coaster here is Cat-O-Pillar, which is a cat that looks like a caterpillar. It honestly reminded me of something you'd see at Energylandia. It was that weird. One of the more bizarre themed areas I've ever seen. I know that this was actually a re-theme of this section. After Peppa Pig World was so successful, the people at Paulton's Park decided to go back and rebrand different areas of the park to make them nicer. This was part of a changeover in 2015. The land made me laugh, that's for sure. But man, some of these statues were a little bizarre, to say the least. Now, most of the other attractions in Paulton's Park are off to the left-hand side, so you're going to have to walk through the gardens to get there. Aside from all the beautiful plant life, sometimes you'll run into some animals. We saw different types of birds, such as flamingos and kookaburras. I had no idea this was an animal park until we were just hanging out in Peppa Pig World and then randomly stumbled across penguins. Didn't expect to see them that day, but I wasn't complaining. And then we get to Lost Kingdom. If Tornado Springs is Discount Radiator Springs, then Lost Kingdom is Jurassic Park. So think dinosaurs and ancient creatures. It made its debut in 2016. It included 2 new roller coasters. Flight of the Pterosaur is a family suspended coaster by Vekoma. It's actually a clone of Freedom Flyer at Fun Spot in Orlando. And then Velociraptor is a family boomerang, their rebound model. There's an identical one at Energylandia. The one going to Kings Island is the exact same. Both of these are really fun additions, even though there are clones out there. The average person visiting this park isn't going to know that. Same with like how Storm Chaser is the same as Sierra Sidewinder. How many people are going to ride both? Probably just the diehard nerds. And if it means the park can afford consistent new additions, really taking into account the decor and thematics, then I am fine with it. I thought this land was really nice. We even encountered some walk-around characters. They had a dinosaur caretaker hanging out by Flight of the Pterosaur who had a baby Triceratops puppet. We got to pet it and learn all about it. It was so cute. You typically only see that sort of stuff at Universal. It was great. But that brings us into our final land, and unfortunately, this is the one side of the park that really feels untouched. Like if everything else feels well landscaped, clearly taken care of, this section is not getting the same treatment. So this is where you can find Cobra, a Gerstlauer bobsled. It does not have any theming at all. It feels like it was just plopped down in a field. It's a 2006 attraction, so it came well before many of these other rides. There's also a Zamperla disco back there, also just off in its own little world, surrounded by concrete. Nothing really to it. It felt like a dead zone. Like when we were there, no one else was walking around. It was just us. Probably also didn't help that it was a dead end, so there's not a whole lot of incentive to go back there. This land clearly is in dire need of a makeover. The same way that the other lands have gotten a refresh, this absolutely should be next. 90% of Paulton's Park is beautiful. This section, I would absolutely use the word ugly to describe. I hope they're able to find a nice theme that they can build around these attractions. Discos are some of the most easily themable rides. There's so many beautiful ones across Europe. With a Gerstlauer bobsled, you could also easily build like rock work around it. Add in some permanent attractions to take up some of this empty space and get rid of these like temporary carnival rides that look like they just recently got bought from the local fair. I think you could do a lot. I would absolutely do that before you add any more new roller coasters. That way the park could feel more cohesive, and then you could work from there. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. It seems like the owners are going in a slightly different direction at the moment, putting in a dark ride, which is absolutely a welcome fit at the park. They don't have anything like that. Looks like we can expect some sort of ghost hunting theme, probably a shooting dark ride. So if that's coming in 2025, what should they add afterwards? In my opinion, their biggest gap is a launch coaster. And I mentioned adding rides a bit more thrilling. I'm not suggesting an Intamin multi-launch here, but maybe an Intamin straddle coaster in the style of Juvalin or Jet Rescue. Go with that tire-driven acceleration, staying low to the ground. Those rides are fantastic and something very different from every other ride in this area. And easily themable too, and I know that Paulton's Park has the land for it. And if you didn't want to do a launch coaster or even a steel coaster, the Gravity Group does some fantastic family wooden coasters. Low height requirement with tons of airtime. A perfect family thrill ride that is something very different than what we've seen in this region. And maybe one day if they want to put in an attraction that has like a decent sized drop that still would work well here, something like Phoenix would be awesome. When Far Up Summerland put in that attraction, it was still very much a family park. And the way those rides are designed, the elements are considered extreme, but the forces are not. I think you could absolutely put in an attraction like that and maintain maintain the integrity of being a family park. I feel like this place is really up and coming. 100% a park to keep your eye on. I wouldn't be surprised if I find myself back here in a couple years because they've added something really cool that I want to experience. I really feel like Paulton's Park is a hidden gem in the UK. Not talked about enough. I know all the UK coaster enthusiasts know about it, but at least here in the US, you never really hear about Paulton's Park. But I absolutely encourage anyone who's planning a visit to the UK to do theme parks to include Paulton's Park as a stop. We did about 4 hours here. We walked onto everything. I think we also went on a school day, so that would probably explain it. But it was really quite a lovely visit. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of Paulton's Park. If you've experienced it, if you agree with the points that I brought up, if you think there's anything I left out, be sure to let me know. And stay tuned for more here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.